Everyone, and welcome. I am Staci Hayes, and I am happy to be here with you while we discuss silence breakers, strategies to end the no questions classroom. So, thank you for dedicating this slice of time being with me. So, as beginning teachers, you all know the struggle. You finished teaching your heart out. You've finished this lesson. You've looked out at your classroom. You've asked, are there any questions? And you are met with stares and silence. And we are here to change that. Because then after you're met with stares and silence, then you sit down or you meet with a student, and all of a sudden, every student in the world is lined up asking you questions. We are here to change that, everyone. So just a little bit about me. I've been in your shoes since 2004, and I currently serve as a secondary instructional coach where I get to work with amazing teachers such as yourself. I was born and raised in Arizona, and I am a proud University of Arizona Wildcat, bear down. And I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son, and a really silly, goofy dog named Rocky, who was about 8 years old, I think. Like I said, I've been an educator since 2004. I am a national board certified teacher, and I certified in 2018 in literacy, reading language arts, and I maintained my certification in 2023. And when I am not working, I am trying to go to sleep because I love naps or spending time with my family and my sorority sisters. But I do love to indulge in a good Dutch Bros iced rebel drink or an iced coffee because caffeine saves lives. Okay, so before we dive in, I want to share a quick note. There is a link available for a note catcher that you can use to take notes and to reflect as we go. And you're welcome to use this resource any way that's going to be best for you. Because since we're watching a recording, I want you to feel free to stop at any time to think, to reflect, to jot things down, because this learning is meant to support you, not to rush you. So here's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to talk about different types of questions students use at school and why students are hesitant to ask questions. Then we'll walk through practical strategies to increase student questioning and talk about fostering a collaborative learning environment and enhancing teacher-student communication. Our learning target today is to implement strategies that foster a collaborative classroom where students feel empowered to ask questions. And so by the end of this session, you'll be able to identify common reasons students are hesitant to ask questions and enhance your teacher-student communication to address questioning effectively. And you're going to choose and plan to implement at least 2 new strategies to boost student questioning. All right, so before we jump into strategies, let's go ahead and ground ourselves in why questions matter. Because questions are not interruptions at all. They're evidence of thinking. And if students aren't asking questions, that doesn't mean they understand. It often means that they don't feel safe or confident enough to speak up. So why do we care so much about questions? Because they are essential. And I'll probably say that one more time. But why, Staci? I want you to think about what happens when students ask questions. So if you take a moment and look at this circle map, in the middle, you have asking questions. That is how we're going to finish the prompt. So when students ask questions, they what? I want you to brainstorm all the things that happen when students ask questions. Happens to you, happens to other students, happens to the students who are asking the questions. And when you are done brainstorming and jotting down all the things that come to mind, you are going to focus, and you're going to focus on these 3 questions. What happens when students don't ask questions? Based on what you know when they do ask questions, what happens when they don't ask the questions? And why is it important for students to ask the questions? And then I want you to put yourself in your student's shoes. And how might your students view these answers that you gave? This is a perfect time to pause this video. You can grab your note catcher. You will see these questions in bullet points instead of the thinking map, and you'll go ahead and answer. Now, I'm going to trust that you're going to pause and reflect, but you know, because this is a recording, I have to continue. So let's continue, shall we? Okay. So, questions are powerful. They are essential. Asking questions drives deeper understanding. It promotes critical thinking and it boosts student engagement. And a classroom where questions flow is a classroom where deep learning is happening. At the heart of learning lies the power of questions. And when students feel comfortable asking questions, guess what? They become active participants in their own learning journey. So, before we get to why they're not asking questions, let's talk about what kinds of questions they're asking. These are the three most common types of questions that your students and adults ask. They're cognitive, social, and operational. So cognitive questioning are the questions we ask to get that new information. It's the information we're asking about ourselves and about others and about the world around us. Some of these questions could be as simple or as complex if you think about it. Why is the sky blue? Or do cows sleep standing up or lying down? And why do I feel so tired today? These are cognitive questions. The second type of question that's most common are the social questions. Now, we ask these questions to make contact, to draw attention, to express disagreement in other social activities. Now, you ask them, kids ask them, we hear them. Questions such as, hey, do you want to sit with me at lunch? Or, why don't you like that song? Or, who is your Roblox avatar? Now, some of us probably won't ask that question, but we might hear it. And I just put that in acting like I know about Roblox. I don't. But I hear the kids asking about it. So that's why I got put in. And our third most common type of question is operational. Now, this operational questions are requests for help or permission for something. Basically, we're asking questions to get our needs met or to fulfill wishes. So, one question that you hear often is, can I go to the bathroom? Or, okay, what can I do when I'm done with my work? Or, can you help me solve this problem? Now, I want you to take a moment and think. Think about these three types of questions: cognitive, social, operational. What questions do you notice are asked the most in your class? And what questions are asked the least? All right, let's continue. So now let's talk about what actually stops students from asking the questions. These barriers often have nothing to do with motivation or lack of motivation, and everything to do with fear, confidence, and learned behaviors. Research shows us that children between the ages of 2 and 5 ask about 40,000 questions. Oh my goodness. Now, if you are not only a teacher, but you're a parent of young kids, that's a lot of questions that you hear. But somewhere along the way, that curiosity fades. And this isn't accidental, everyone. It's a learned behavior. Many students stop asking questions because, let this sink in. School teaches them that silence is safer. I know. Because many classrooms unintentionally reward compliance over curiosity. Students learn quickly that it's easier to stay quiet than to risk being wrong. If you have to pause and let that sink in, I get it. So let's take a moment to think back to when we paused and reflected at the beginning of our discussion. We know why it's important to ask questions. We know what happens when students don't ask the questions in our classrooms. But before we dive into each barrier, I want you to think about the questions we asked and answered. How do these questions and these answers connect with the barriers we are about to talk about? Let's see. All right. So why are they not asking questions? Why the silence? Well, it usually boils down to three things: fear, self-awareness, and hyper-independence. Now, fear. This is the biggest one. Students are terrified of the social risk. They're worried their peers will see them as incompetent or that they'll embarrass themselves. And sometimes they are really genuinely afraid of how the teacher will react. So think about it. Will you sigh? Will you roll your eyes when they ask a question? Or will you get impatient because you know you taught this and you've explained this multiple times? So if a student thinks asking a question will cost them socially and emotionally, they most likely won't ask the question. Now, the second barrier is self-awareness. Now, this is a little tricky. They may be affected by the Dunning-Kruger effect. And now the Dunning-Kruger effect was named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger. And it is this cognitive bias in which people with limited competence in a particular domain overcompensate their abilities, or because this ability becomes easy to us, we think everyone knows it. In many cases, students don't know enough to realize that they are confused. So they don't know what they don't know. Or they might overestimate their understanding. And if they don't know what to ask, they ask nothing. And that also happens with teachers because we know it and it comes to us pretty easily. We just assume it's going to come to them easily or they already know it. That's not the case, not all the time. And our third barrier is hyper-independence. This often happens with our high-achieving students, or those who've experienced trauma in their lives. These students believe that they should be able to do it alone, or they should already know how to do it. So they view asking for help as a sign of weakness or failure. And so they may isolate themselves instead of collaborating and keep quiet even when they're stuck. These are often the students where we say they just don't care or they just don't want to learn. No, they just might suffer from hyper-independence. So now it's time to reflect. I want you to think about yourself and I want you to think about your students. Are there any students that stand out to you or that would fit this particular category? And are you thinking they don't care or is it something else? So think about that. So now let's move on to strategies that you can actually use. Now, these strategies are not about adding more to your plate. They're about shifting how students experience your classroom. Each strategy is meant to reduce fear, increase clarity, and normalize help seeking. So as we walk through these, I want you to think about which barrier, fear, self-awareness, or hyper-independence, each strategy helps to address. Okay, so while we recognize the importance of questions, creating a safe space is where all students feel comfortable asking them can be a challenge. Because we need to remember that our students come from different backgrounds and they may have different lived experiences or even anxieties that prevent them from participating fully. So, the first step to increasing questioning is creating a safe space. I truly encourage you to take a good, honest look at yourself in your class and don't just focus on a few students who aren't shy. And then let's look at this quote from Neil Postman. He said, children enter school as question marks and leave as periods. And it's our job to keep those question marks alive. So, the first strategy is providing a safe environment. This is the foundation. Without a safe environment, none of the other strategies will stick at all. You have to actively build a help-seeking culture by fostering trust. A safe environment means students know that mistakes are part of learning and not something to be punished or mocked. This shows up in how we respond when students are wrong. So ask yourself, do I rush to correct them or do I pause and ask them to explain their thinking? Am I encouraging academic risk-taking and normalizing mistakes? Am I constantly telling students mistakes are opportunities to learn and grow and not a sign of failure? It also shows up in our language. So using phrases like, you know what, thank you for asking that, or I'm really glad you brought that up. These send a clear message that questions are welcome. And if students believe that asking a question will protect their dignity instead of threaten it, they are much more likely to speak up. So, the next strategy is being the example or being the model, because students take cues from us. If we don't model questioning, if we don't model learning, if we don't model thinking, they're not going to do that either. And this is huge for chipping away at the fear and hyper-independence barriers. You need to model help seeking publicly. Modeling means thinking out loud during instruction. Like, I'm not sure why this works yet, but let's figure this out together. Or if you're saying things like, I really need to double check that. Or, you know what, let me ask a better question. This is showing them that it is okay to struggle. Verbalize your thought process. Say things like, oh, I am stuck on this calculation class. What's the next variable? What's the next variable I should check? I need your help. Because this shows that you are intentionally asking for help publicly to normalize the behavior. And it also shows students that not knowing is normal and that learning is a process. When teachers position themselves as learners, students feel less pressure to be perfect and more willing to let themselves have that permission to ask. And when a student helps others or helps you, always, 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 always acknowledge their contribution. Our third strategy is using question stems. Now, this is your weapon against self-awareness. Many students don't ask questions because they simply don't know how to phrase them. Question stems remove that barrier. And if they're lost, they can use a confusion stem. So if you look at the screen, confusion stem could be, I'm confused about blank. If they've tried, but they're stuck, they can use the alternative approach. Okay, I've tried this, but it's not working. Can you suggest another approach? Question stems give students a script. This is especially helpful for students who struggle with confidence, language, or processing speed. Now, question stems must be taught, not just posted. You want to start by modeling how to use a STEM with a real classroom problem, and then have students practice using STEMs with a partner. And then finally, you can have them practice using STEMs with you during instruction. And over time, students internalize this language and no longer need the STEMs. The goal is independence, not reliance. And so you could make posters and put them on your wall. If you use interactive notebooks, journals, you can make a copy for every student. If students sit in groups and you have a basket of supplies, you can laminate or do a ring with the question stems on the ring. So many different ways. All right. Next one, sticky notes. We all love a good post-it note, don't we? So anonymous sticky notes. So anonymous questions reduce that fear immediately. Students write questions on sticky notes and place them on a board, a desk, chart, or a digital whiteboard. And you can address these patterns later and respond during a pause in instruction. Now, this is a powerful strategy for students who worry about being judged or who have had negative experiences asking questions in the past. Another way you can use this is require students to ask questions. You can ask them, what are some questions that you could ask about whatever the topic is? Jot down at least one question, whether you know the answer or you don't know the answer. And so this again makes everything anonymous. Now, similar to the sticky notes, we have the question box or the question wall. And now a question box or question wall sends that clear message. Your questions matter, even if I cannot answer them right now. So this is especially helpful during small group instruction where students don't have to interrupt or sit in confusion. They know their question's going to be acknowledged eventually. So reviewing these questions also helps you plan for future lessons based on real student needs. And we have other tools that you can use. So Think, Pair, Share allows students to rehearse their thinking before speaking publicly. And intentional wait time gives students space to process instead of rewarding the fastest responder. And also having a clear no wrong answers policy reinforces that thinking matters over perfection. So it's very important to know that these strategies only work best when they're used consistently and not occasionally. But you don't have to take my word for it. Let's hear from some real life students now. This is from a podcast that I host called 30 Minute PD, a podcast for busy teachers. And when I was very active in it, I would interview my own children. And so you're going to hear from my son Isaiah, who is now in 7th grade, but at the time he was in 3rd grade. And then my daughter Elizabeth, who is now a freshman in high school, but at the time she was in 5th grade. So you are more than welcome to find this on Spotify and I think Amazon and other podcast places. But I'm just going to play a snippet of each student. So each snippet from Isaiah and a snippet from Elizabeth. So let me see if I can get this technology going for you. And we will listen. Welcome to the Are You Afraid That
the teacher would get upset with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes that happens.
Yeah,
Or
sometimes it does happen. You're right. So, of getting afraid that or being afraid that the teacher gets upset with you. Now, are you the things you talked to me about were when you were working one on one with me, so there weren't kids around. I want you to think about asking questions in front of the entire class. So, are you comfortable when you're not understanding something? Are you comfortable with, raising your hand and asking a question?
it does get kind of uncomfortable, but once you do it like more often, you get used to talking in front of the whole class, and then you would just be like raise your hand when you don't know something, and you wouldn't have any fear of getting like somebody laughing at you.
Okay. And now in the classroom you are in right now, does it feel uncomfortable to ask questions about something you don't know?
Not really anymore, because I know like everyone in my class.
You know everyone in your class. Okay. Well, what are some of the um, what are some of the things in the classroom that you might have questions about, or students might have questions about?
One of the things that students might have questions about is like when we're reading a story, and then whenever there's like some weird bump or there's like a word that you don't know,
Uh-huh.
like sometimes your teacher just thinks everyone knows that word,
Mm.
but then you don't, and so you like raise your hand, but you're like scared, and then you put it down again, and then you don't know.
And so as a result, and you getting scared and putting your hand down, do you ever figure out what the word is?
No.
No. And so you're still just left being all confused, huh?
And
Okay.
and if there's like something that includes it and like something that you have to do, you
Hmm.
won't know what that word is.
That's right. So it's important to get clarification. All right. So what do you think your classmates, your third grade classmates, or second grade students, or first grade students, what do you think they need in order for um, what do they need in order to be comfortable with asking the teacher questions in front of the class?
Most of the times, some people just want to know the whole class so that when they ask questions, they won't be afraid because and if you're friends with the whole class, then you don't really have to be scared about anything because they probably won't laugh at you.
I see. I see.
And second graders, just from me, are more like they don't understand as much as you might be teaching them,
Mm,
so that when they try to ask questions, if there's like someone really shy in your class and
hmm.
they want to know something, they might not even raise their hand a bit and just sit there.
You're right. If they're really shy, you're right. So I hear that we as teachers need to make sure that what we're teaching, you all have that prior knowledge. We can't just assume that you know something.
Yeah, and if it's like a big word that no one, that everybody's like raising, like if someone raises their hand and then puts it down, you should like call on them because you know they have a question.
Right.
But then if they don't want to say it anymore, just call them over to you so that they can say it just with you.
Oh, so I have to be aware of my audience and see so I can later pick out those kids who may need to talk to me in private.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate you, Isaiah.
So that was Isaiah when he was my student in third grade. And I hope as you were listening to it, you noticed some of those barriers that he mentioned that he experiences or that his classmates may experience. So now we're going to listen to my daughter Elizabeth and again, keep an eye out or an ear out for some of those barriers.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Elizabeth, you've been in school and at the same school since kindergarten. And my question to you is, do you feel comfortable asking for help or asking the teacher a question about something you don't understand? Do you feel comfortable asking that?
Well, it depends. It depends on the question. Like, if I think it's like a simple question and an answer I should know, I don't really want to ask it. But if it's like a hard question, then I'll ask it.
Okay. And so what do you mean by if I think it's a simple question or an answer I should know?
Like something that we've learned before and I know it. So, yeah, like a dumb question to ask.
Oh, you think it's a dumb question. So have you ever asked one of those simple questions before in class?
No,
No, you just are not. So why do you not want to ask that simple question?
because I know I can figure it out. It's just I might be getting distracted or tired.
Oh, okay. So you don't want to ask the question because you want to figure it out on your own.
Yes.
Okay. Is that always the case, or are there other reasons why you would not feel comfortable asking questions?
Like I wouldn't ask a question if it wasn't like related to the topic.
Oh, yeah.
School.
That's good. That's good. We do have some off-topic people. So, okay. So you
So again, I hope you were able to hear from a student's point of view how they fall into those different barriers and also what they need in order to feel comfortable asking the questions. All right, so we're almost done. So getting students comfortable with asking questions doesn't happen by accident and it doesn't happen overnight. It's built on trust, consistency, and just collaborative, safe practices. Because when students feel safe, questions will follow. So this is the most important part, committing to action. I want you to think right now about two strategies you plan to try in your classroom next week. You can find these strategies on your note catcher, and so you can check them off and write your plan of action. Then I want you to use these questions you see on the screen to guide your next step. So, what actionable steps do you plan to take? And what thoughts has this sparked for you? I thank you so much for investing this time in your students and in your practice. You now have the tools to be a silence breaker in your classroom. So please don't hesitate to reach out via email if you have any questions. I would love to answer them. And I just want you all to have a great school year. Take care and goodbye.